And we are now joined by Lydia Ndirangu, who is the manager for tax and regulatory services at KPMG, that is an audit firm. Thank you so much for joining us. Borrowing, is it exactly a bad thing for us?
Borrowing is not a bad thing per se, but the thing we have to look at is, can we manage our debt? Look at China. 90% of their revenue, they get it from debt. But then again, we have to look at the nature of the debts that we have currently in Kenya. And majority of the debt is from country, and then the other amount is from agencies. And what we have to be careful about is that when you look at the agencies and what they give us, you will see the case that happened in Argentina, where the debts that were from country, they went to agencies, and they couldn't pay their debts. And what happened is that the assets of Argentina were recovered. A ship in Ghana, which had just docked for fueling, ended up being seized by the vultures because they didn't pay their debt. So we have to be really careful from who we borrow the money from.
All right. Currently, we are taking quite a number of, we are actually borrowing from countries like China, and there have been arguments about how Kenya is going to pay back this debt, because we seem to increasingly borrow from China. But then again, there are certain conditions that are tied to this borrowing. For instance, the Standard Gauge Railway supervision is going to be done by a Chinese company. That is because it's going to take us 10 years or more to pay back this money. So at the end of the day, when we borrow, are we aware of the consequences of our borrowing?
I think we have to be really careful when we look at the borrowing, because when we borrow to, let's say, build a Standard Gauge Railway and it brings money in return, that's an investment that people are seeing the money came in and we see where it went. For example, when you look at the Eurobond, the money came in, but if we are asked to where did we take it back, where did you take it, it brings the question of, are we really borrowing for development, or are we borrowing to put money in some people's pockets? Yes.
All right. And when you talk about putting money in people's pockets, we are borrowing same money that is being eaten up by corruption. And corruption is one of the biggest challenges the country faces, not just Kenya, but it's a headache across Africa. But how do we deal with these challenges while at the same time we are borrowing huge chunks of money from outside of Kenya?
In terms of dealing with the challenges, we have to look at accountability, and stringent measures have to be put in place. And you see, that's why even for China, they've given the money and they've come to oversee the project that they've given. So it means that even if we get money from a different country, you will actually see that we have to form a sort of partnership with them, because they have to see where has the money gone, especially the donor funds where we don't have to repay them. But where we have funds that we have to actually repay them and we do not put measures to it, we'll find that it will be a hole. And right now we are at 3.2, and very soon we'll be at 5.2. And since the GDP is currently at 5.6, the rate of debt and the rate of GDP is not in tandem. And you'll see we will not be able to meet our debts.
All right. So when a country borrows, usually why are they borrowing? Are they borrowing because they want to finance the huge capex projects, or are they borrowing because they think it's the only way out?
When a country is borrowing, most of the time they have looked at the internal tax revenue and seen that they can't meet the budget. And when they can't meet the budget, that's when they decide to borrow. So looking at, can we really sustain our own? Can we increase our tax collection to meet our budget? And the answer, in actual sense, if the mathematics was done correctly, is yes, we can. Because currently we are at 45% compliance. And the 45% compliance is giving us 20% of the GDP. If we were to just take it back to 90%, you'll find that we can go as high as 40% of GDP. That means that we can collect at 2.3 trillion. And with that, you'll see that we can actually fund our projects if we are efficient in collection of taxes.
All right. And, when people are scared that they might be paying higher taxes, it's also something to worry about.
True.
But in the instance that Kenyans are going to be taxed higher, what services should they expect from the government?
The question that people have to ask themselves is it that there's no political will for paying taxes, or a national will to pay taxes? If you look at it from the national will, the same way people are saying, I have paid my taxes, yet there's a big portfolio outside my house. I've paid my taxes, there's no health. So it's something that we have to look at, and we have to ensure that if we're going to say we're expanding the tax bracket, everybody needs to contribute. And the government has to ensure it's accountable to the people who've given up their money. So it's very, very important that we see where the money is going to, we see the developmental projects are being done, and not that people are paying taxes for it to be taken to the recurrent expenses.
Right. Okay. And finally, my question to you is going to be in regard to the push for counties to generate their own income. This talk has been going on, but then how exactly do you think counties can be able to generate their own income and cut down on reliance from the national government?
When you look at counties, the first thing that counties have to really show the people, they've been given allocations in the previous past. But the question is, where has this money been going to? So now, when it comes to them wanting to impose additional taxes to the people will push back. And most of the time, you'll find a huge resistance because have they done with the little that they've been given by the national government? So before they can go back to the people and ask them for money, they let them account for the money that they've been given by the National Treasury from the taxes from the mass. So that after they've shown a good job, then they can go back and say that we will either introduce a toll or a levy to cater for the counties.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Lydia Ndirangu, Manager, Tax and Regulatory Services at KPMG. We're going to be speaking to her yet again.